What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, an intro that I usually save the more excited version of for Kraken wins, and this unfortunately was not that, as the Kraken do end up falling 3-2 to the St. Louis Blues in a game that, while the way we get to that outcome was a little bit frustrating, honestly, I thought as a whole the team did play very well. Still, since it's the first game of the season, we can show a little bit of excitement just for hockey being back in the first place. And the Kraken got to start at home for the first time ever, so that's nice too. Even if it is for just one game and then they've got 3 days off and then a back-to-back on the weekend to start a road trip, either way they do get the one game to start out the season at home and also start out the NHL season in North America. There was a couple international games between the Buffaloes and Devils that happened late last week, but as far as North America is concerned, the Kraken got to kick off the season. Again, not with a win. But before we get into the game, with this being the first game of the fourth season, there are some pieces of pretty big news and some non-news of something that we thought might happen, but hasn't yet anyway, that we should go over first. And actually, before we even get to team-related news, one piece of news for the channel starting this season, and actually starting with this video, we're launching a merch store here for Cheap Seats, so if you want to rep Cheap Seats, now will be your chance to do it. I'll have a link for that down in the comment section below. Absolutely not in the comment section, in the description below. Absolutely no pressure, obviously, just for those that have been wanting it. I've been kind of teasing or hinting that I might do it for a while now, but it's finally up. As far as the team is concerned, there was some big news coming into this game. One, the team was going to have a captain, but they kept it pretty hush-hush who that was going to be, and that was so that they could announce the captain as the game gets started, introducing all the players, then the assistant captains, and it became pretty obvious who it was going to be as that was going along, especially since they went by jersey number, and Jordan Eberle was left to the very end. So, to the delight of certainly at least the crowd that was in attendance at the game, but I would think most of Kraken Nation across, I suppose, the world, the Kraken do announce Jordan Eberle as the second Kraken captain in the team's history. And I'm sure some of that excitement was just to have a captain in general, but Eberle's been a well-liked player, and for good reason, ever since that inaugural season when he came to the Kraken via the expansion draft from the Islanders. And I gotta say, while I was maybe a little bit surprised that it was Eberle that was chosen for captain, I wasn't necessarily shocked by it. He has really, for almost ever since Giordano left in the inaugural season, been kind of the de facto captain of the team, certainly when it comes to the media-facing side of things. He's the guy that often gets the less desirable media appearances, or the post-game, gets asked questions in the post-game just because he's good with media, and yeah, when there's a disappointing loss, they need to put somebody out in front of the cameras. He seems to often be the guy that steps up to that plate, whether that's his choice, coach's choice, whatever it is. Obviously, he's also been an alternate captain since the team started up and has had a big voice in the locker room from a leadership perspective already. So, yeah, maybe it's not the most surprising thing since he is now signed for at least 2 more years anyway. And while he isn't going to necessarily be the long-term captain for years and years and years like we were kind of expecting for a while the next captain to be after they went with no captain for 2 years, maybe it's just a situation where they still are looking at kind of a Beniers or Wright type of guy for that C for the long term. They still wanted to give those guys a couple more years to age into the league and become a little bit more established and feel a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, Wright wasn't going to be the captain. He just started in the NHL, but maybe they just figured Beniers wasn't quite ready for that, especially after the season he had last year. So give a guy that is well deserving of the seat in Eberle that for the next couple seasons and go from there. So obviously that was pretty big news then that we got right before the game gets started, as they are announcing the whole roster out onto the ice for that first home game. Usually they just announce the starting lineup, but a little bit more pageantry and hoopla around the first home game of the season as usual. I mean, most sports introduce their entire roster for the first game, except for, I don't think anyone would really want that for the NFL with a 52-man roster. But again, all the extra, stuff that goes around the first home game. Really, the announcement of Eberle, the roar that got from the crowd was very loud and really only matched by one other announcement, and that was the introduction of Coach Campbell, obviously now officially making history as the first female coach behind the bench of an NHL team. And she got a very loud welcome that I think even surprised her a little bit. She tried to keep the stoic stone face that they often do on the bench, but it seemed like it it got her a little bit there. And even Coach Bilesma, after the fact, noted how loud it was and kind of joked around saying that his only real question after that was whether or not he would get as warm of a welcome, and also admitted that he did not get quite the same welcome that she did, though he still did get a very respectable, loud cheer from the crowd when he was announced. Beyond that, really the only other news that we got today is kind of just non-news, in that the Kraken didn't make any moves or trades before this first game to try and free up a little bit more cap space so they could have more of a non-active bench, as only one player, Josh Mahura, was non-active for this game, not suited up. So the Kraken only running with one extra player at the moment, and usually teams like to have 2 or 3. They just don't have the cap space to have 2 or 3 right now, so that's kind of why a lot of people are thinking that there might be a trade for, to free up a little bit of cap space. A lot of people thinking either Gord or Tanev, since this is likely the last season in Seattle for either one of them, both on the last year of their contracts. We'll have to wait and see. I would think Gord probably stays around, but who knows? Maybe they just decide that they'll run with one extra and just make it work until an injury happens and they can put someone on LTIR or something like that. And one more thing real quick here before I promise we'll finally get into the game itself. As a friendly reminder, since this game was on ESPN as part of their season kickoff triple header, almost the entire rest of the regular season games, I think there's 9 more nationally televised games, but the vast majority of the rest of the games are no longer on Root Sports. They will be on the Tigna network, the local broadcasting networks. I think I can find an image of the different places that's available, but if you're in Washington, Oregon, Alaska, I think it's just Washington, Oregon, Alaska, that's the local area for the Kraken. If you're in that area, it'll be available on your basic public access networks or on Amazon Prime Video. That's where I was watching them for the preseason games, and it worked pretty great. They've had a pretty seamless transition, and it's a lot of the same faces that you've been used to, with the one notable exception, I would say, of Nick Olczyk is gone. He's gone to be a part of Utah's inaugural broadcasting crew. But with all that having been said, and with the now news portion of this, if that's what you want to call it, out of the way, let's get into the game itself. With Grubauer in net, the Kraken get off to a very strong start. I think St. Louis might have had the first shot on net, but it was all Kraken for the vast majority of the first period. They were showing off either the energy that they got from the crowd during those intro festivities, or maybe it was more showing off, and probably had a little bit more to do with showing off this new, faster-paced Bilesma system that definitely was stretching out the ice a little bit more. The Kraken, still not necessarily crisp when it came to the passing, but they were finding their way into the offensive end pretty consistently and pretty quickly. Transitions looked mostly pretty good with a few missed passes here and there, but the Kraken spent the vast majority of the time with the puck, and a lot of that time in the offensive end. They had a couple of different shifts of almost a minute-long stints in the offensive end without the puck getting cleared, a number of very good chances, and not just the dump and chase that we've gotten used to seeing a lot of over the last few years. There was still some of that. That's always going to be a part of the game to some degree, but there was a lot more skating with the puck into the offensive end. One guy skating it down deep and then passing it up to the blue line as more come across to follow into the offensive end, which really does help get things set up and allows for that passing around the outside and finding the shots, and eventually leading to some very good chances for the Kraken here early on in this first period, and then really continuing throughout the period as Cartier and Tanev both had pretty good chances early on. Bjorkstrand, Beniers, McCann all got very good chances in tight without much between them and Binnington. Unfortunately, Binnington was up to the task of any of them that actually made it on net. A couple of them missed. I think there was a couple posts hit, including one back the other way. Really, the only good chance the Blues got is they did push back a little bit from kind of the 5-minute mark to maybe the 8-minute mark or so. They had a bit of a push. That really didn't lead to much of anything, as the Kraken were doing a very good job defensively of challenging the Blues anytime they touched the puck. It seemed like there was a Kraken stick right there to challenge them, not giving the Blues much empty or clean ice to work with whatsoever. Always a Kraken player getting right to the puck. Yeah, pretty much just making life difficult for the Blues whenever they did get chances to touch the puck, which were much more few and far between than the time the Kraken had it, like I said, and the only good chance that came for the Blues was a pretty good one that Kyrou ends up putting off the post behind Grubauer. He and a lot of people, including even myself at the time, thought it had actually gone in and bounced off of one of the supporting bars of the net itself and come back out, but it was waved off immediately. The ref was right on it, and sure enough, on the replay, it had gone off the bar and out the other way behind Grubauer, which is part of why it looked like it maybe had gone into the net, 'cause it went past him on one side and then bounced behind his back out the other way. Still, no goal there, and unfortunately, even with all the Kraken pressure, no goal going into the first intermission for either team. However, although the Kraken were kept off the score sheet in the first period by the Blues, thanks almost entirely to Jordan Binnington, even in spite of everything that they had done well in that first frame, it did not last very long into the second period before that scoreless tie was broken, as the Kraken once again come out into the second period, guns a-blazing, tentacles, we'll just stick with guns a-blazing. The Kraken come out, it's an offensive rush with the first shift out on the ice. Eberle makes a very nice play along the boards to keep the puck going towards the Blues' end of the ice, that eventually leading to a 2-on-1 for McCann and Dunn with the puck. Dunn skates in, looks at McCann all the way before firing off a shot, which Binnington is able to make a save on, but it trickles off of Binnington right out to the side where Dunn's the first one to it. He wraps it around Binnington and slides it into the net to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead. And first goal of the season, the Kraken have an early lead less than a minute into the second period. The goal was originally awarded as an unassisted goal for Dunn, but after a while anyway, I'm not even sure this happened until well after the game, they did correctly go back and give Eberle the primary assist on this Dunn goal. So Eberle, newly minted captain for the Kraken, starts off his tenure as the captain of the team, his first game as a captain in the NHL, even after having been an assistant captain way back early in his career with the Oilers. Well, he makes a good play here along the boards, sets up the Kraken, and just like that, they take the lead here just 30 seconds or so into the second period. But the Kraken weren't done there just yet, as they keep the pressure on the Blues, continuing to shift after shift, get into the Blues' end of the ice, and really make them work to keep this a one-goal game. But it's not much longer before Shane Wright wins a faceoff in the offensive end, and just 2 minutes, or actually just under 2 minutes after the Kraken took the lead, that faceoff is back to Borgen. Borgen from one side of the blue line out to the other for Riker Evans. He winds up and fires off a shot just as Tolvanen flashes in front of him. Tolvanen gets a piece of it, and it's behind Binnington and into the goal to give the Kraken the 2-0 lead, as Golvanen strikes here still early in the second period to give the Kraken the 2-0 lead. And the next thing you know, it's the fourth line of Gord, Tanev, and Cartier that's getting involved as they get into the offensive end, start to get set up, but the puck is cleared just across the blue line by the Blues, right to Jamie Oleksiak, though, who fires off a shot and buries it into the net, somehow getting it past Binnington. The Kraken take the 3-0 lead, or so we thought, as it is quickly waved off by the linesman, the official also waving it off, and although the horn goes off, the crowd reacts. This one ends up coming off the board for offside. Again, it was absolutely, without a question, the right call. Oleksiak does get his stick on the puck to fire that shot towards the net on the other side of the blue line, and although no other Kraken player touched it, the entire fourth line never had a chance to get back across the blue line, so the goal can't count before they touch back up on the other side of the blue line. It is offside. It wasn't helped by the fact in the arena that the replay they kept showing for why it was being called offside was the initial entry of the fourth line into the offensive end, which was completely onside, unquestionably. That just wasn't the part that was being called offside. So the crowd, understandably, having not really necessarily seen what had happened live in action and then only being shown that replay, were quite upset with the officials for taking that goal off the board. And meanwhile, complete chaos is breaking out in front of the Blues bench. Gord is getting in a fight with somebody on the Blues team for reasons that I'm still not entirely sure of. That draws quite a bit of a crowd. Eventually, they let Gord and Buchnevich, I don't know who it was, square off. They don't really end up even squaring off. They kind of just hug each other for a while and then get broken up and sent to the penalty boxes. And that started what turned out to be a pretty chippy middle part of the second period. Even amongst all that, though, the Kraken are maintaining the offensive pressure, getting wave after wave into the offensive end, and almost score officially a third time as Tolvanen gets into the offensive end on a bit of a rush. and winds up to take a shot, but the puck is poked off of his stick before he can get the shot off. Right back to Shane Wright, who makes a nifty little backhand pass into the slot for a wide open Bjorkstrand. Unfortunately, though, with the puck maybe rolling a little bit on him, Bjorkstrand isn't able to just fire off the quick one-touch shot, which probably would have beat Binnington. Instead, he tries to control the puck a little bit, gives one little handle, and then the shot, which was a little bit better aimed at the top corner, but it gave Binnington just that split second longer that he needed to reach out the glove hand and make what still was a very nice save there by Binnington. All credit due, he really is the one that won this game for the Blues. And unfortunately for the Kraken, with that nice save from Binnington, and some more shortly after, general shenanigans and just chippiness between the two teams, it all comes out to a power play for the Blues, which not long into, Kyrou is able to work his way around Alexiak to get a bit of a partial break chance on that power play. He beats Grubauer through the 5-hole to get the Blues on the board. But you know what? That's okay. Kyrou's a very good player. We'll just learn our lesson. Let's not let specifically that one most talented player on the Blues roster get behind the entire defense, and we'll be fine. After all, it was a power play. These things happen, I suppose. You still have a lead. Just protect that lead and get back to how you were playing. Maybe you don't get involved in all the extracurriculars that could lead to more power plays for the Blues. Unfortunately, however, that lead for the Kraken only lasts about a minute and a half longer as the Blues get back into the offensive end, and not terribly unlike how the Kraken scored their second goal. It's a shot not long after a face-off, if I remember correctly, or at least the Blues get into the offensive end, are able to kind of set up, cycle the puck around from one side to the other. A shot is tipped, gets past Grubauer with that tip and a flashing player in front of the shot, and just like that, the game is tied. So the puck goes to center ice to start what's basically a new game as far as the scoreboard is concerned, and the puck gets dropped. The Kraken push it towards the Blues end of the ice, but 20 seconds after the Blues tie the game, it's once again Jordan Kyrou set loose on a breakaway, getting past the entire Kraken defense, who apparently did not learn the lesson from the penalty kill. Kyrou skates in, beats Grubauer for a second time, and the Blues in 2 minutes go from being down 2-0 to leading 3-2. Finally, after this third goal goes in to give the Blues the lead, the Kraken wake back up and start to press to try and even things up until eventually, with around 30 seconds or so left in the second period, they send the Blues to another power play where Grubauer actually has to make a couple of saves before the period is out. Go to intermission, come back from intermission, the Kraken kill off the rest of the power play. Beniers almost gets a shorthanded chance, but it ends up being defended pretty well. And that ends up kind of being the story of the entire third period. The Kraken do get a power play that really never goes much of anywhere. They do get a couple of shots. Beniers had a shot on goal. I think Montour had one. They had a couple shots on goal, so it certainly wasn't a totally anemic, pointless power play, but it doesn't serve to even the game back up like the Kraken needed it to. And by the end of it, I think that power play resulted in 2 of the 4 shots the Kraken get in the third period as a whole, so the Blues figured something out to slow down the Kraken offense, and I will have to say that part of the only 4 shots in the third period there is that the Kraken did kind of revert to some bad habits, maybe you could call them, from years past, of not necessarily shooting the puck when they certainly could have, trying to get a little bit too cute with one extra pass to get a slightly more dangerous chance. And unfortunately, those passes just never connected. Bjorkstrand had one really good look that he passed up to try to shove it to the back door for what would have been a tap-in goal for, I think, Tolvanen, if I'm not mistaken. Still, the pass has to get through for that to be a tap-in goal. The pass never gets through, so there isn't even a shot on goal made whatsoever. Binnington just kind of stands there and watches the play happen around him. I mean, he wasn't actually just standing there. He was playing the position the way you would play the position when the puck is right around the blue paint. The point is, only 4 shots on goal in an entire third period is not making the goaltender work particularly hard, and when you're having a night like Binnington was, you gotta make him work to try and score. And to be fair, one of the better ways to beat a goaltender playing as well as Binnington is to pass a puck from one side of his face to the other and make him move around. Unfortunately, the Kraken were just not choosing the best times to do that and not taking wide open shots from in tight when they had them. All that results in eventually the net going empty. Fortunately, the Blues never hit the empty net, I guess. Doesn't really matter. It's the same outcome. They do get a wraparound chance with about 1 or 2 seconds left on the empty net, but he ends up putting it off the far post and out to, suppose, save the Kraken the embarrassment of one extra goal allowed to the empty net. In the end, though, the result is the same. The Kraken lose in regulation 3-2 after playing really a fantastic game, certainly for the entirety of the first period and the vast majority of the second period, until 2 minutes end up costing them the game there towards the back half of the second. So yeah, basically that fact that 2 minutes essentially ruined what was otherwise a great first ever home season opener, the first game of Campbell and Bielsma as coaches in Seattle. Campbell making history, also the first game of Eberle as a captain, and the fantastic game that really he played from start to finish. It is really frustrating that those 2 minutes ruined everything, essentially. Still, I gotta say, generally speaking, and I don't know if this is because the Kraken just played a fantastic game outside of those 2 minutes, or if it's rose-tinted glasses or just general excitement at this being finally hockey returning and the regular season getting started and all that excitement that led into the start of this game. It's a disappointing loss, but not one that I'm really that upset about. Sure, it would have been nice if they could have held on to a 2-goal lead and not given up 3 goals in 2 minutes, but the team still played a fantastic game, and like they said somewhat begrudgingly at the end of the game, I think Gord particularly said this, that if they play the way they played the majority of this game, certainly 56 or so minutes of this game, then they're going to be very successful over the course of this season. So in that way, it's very much the type of loss that you're more okay with at the start of the season. The team was doing a lot of the right things, and especially it being the first regular season game of a drastically different system than what they were running the previous year, and they were largely successful in doing and accomplishing what that system's trying to do in generating offense, even if it didn't lead to as many goals as you would necessarily expect. Binnington had a fantastic game in net for the Blues, but the Kraken got a lot of very good in tight chances. I mean, you can just see the heat map from this game. It's not the type of heat map we are used to seeing from the dump and chase Hackstall offense. The Kraken still played pretty well defensively, aside from, again, those 2 unfortunate minutes. So yeah, I would say it's a type of game that makes you feel good about how the team is playing, just maybe don't have the 2 minutes of falling apart in the middle of it. And I guess to continue the thought that I had going there, well, this is the type of loss that early in the season and with a new system is you're a little bit more okay with. Admittedly, this is the type of loss that once you get to really even January, but anything past January, it would be very, very frustrating. There would be a different tone to this whole video and R&R and recap afterwards. I'm sure there would have been much different tone with a lot of the interviews afterwards. It was still a pretty disappointed tone, but all the guys admitting that they had to take a lot of the positives out of this game, and that's the realistic thing to do. Take the positives out of it, learn not only the lessons from the things that went wrong, but learn the lessons from the things that went well, and there was a lot more that went well than went wrong. Unfortunately, it just didn't end up being that way on the scoreboard. I suppose the good news is they do now have 3 days to learn some of those lessons before they have the back-to-back games this weekend in Minnesota and then in Dallas. I will also say that there were some other times in this game that didn't necessarily, or I should say, could have gone worse. There was a couple of other defensive lapses that they had on rushes for the Blues that very well could have ended up in the Kraken net, and really, honestly, probably should have if the Blues had actually connected on passes or not flubbed shots. Still, generally speaking, I'd say the Kraken played pretty well defensively, aside from letting Kyrou pass them twice, and then the tip shot's just the type of thing that's going to happen. But yeah, don't let the most talented offensive player pass your entire defense if you can help it. And yeah, played well defensively. Lots of players had great games, I would say, in this one. Certainly Tolvanen, Bjorkstrand, Shane Wright played really well in this game. Honestly, I went and looked at it. I was a little bit surprised. It seemed like he did really well in the faceoff dot, which younger players tend to not do very well, and he certainly did not in limited reps in the faceoff dot last season, or really the few games he's played in the NHL up to this point. Ultimately, he ended up going 6 for 18 in the faceoff dot, so I guess statistically not a great night, but he won some important ones, including the one that led to the Tolvanen goal. Chandler Stevenson, weirdly, the times I noticed him taking faceoffs, he seemed to lose a lot of them, but he came away with it with a 60.8 face-off win percentage, so I suppose he did pretty well in that way. Not really a very noticeable night from Stevenson. Montour, I would say I noticed a little bit more. He had a pretty good night, just didn't get on the score sheet. Beniers played fairly well. Eberle very well as his first game as a captain, so I guess with that, we should probably just get to the Kraken 3 stars here for this first game of the 4th season. Of course, with that, as always, or I should say for now the 2nd season, the Kraken R&R 3 stars are brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. So if you want to help support the channel a little bit more than you already are by watching the video to this point, which already supports quite a bit, or liking the video also could help support. But if you want to support even more, you can go over to Patreon through the link down below in the description and support even more. And I, after every game, put up a post to get your thoughts on the game over there and give you a chance to have some heavily weighted input onto who is decided or who's picked as the Kraken 3 stars for these R&R. You also get a chance to vote on player awards at the end of the season and that kind of stuff. So if you want to, go ahead and check out that link down below to Patreon. Again, absolutely no pressure whatsoever. Anyway, with that, let's get to the 3 stars themselves. And quick and honorable mention, Ryker Evans had an absolutely fantastic game, and it really came down to the wire for me. If it was fully up to me, I might have had Evans in it, but based off Patreon, I think Evans can be an honorable mention for this one. The way he played this game, he'll be in these 3 stars plenty of times over the course of this season. As far as the 3 stars themselves, my first star, I gotta go with Eeli Tolvanen. He had an absolutely fantastic game. Obviously gets the 2nd goal, so that's a big part of it, but Tolvanen comes in a fantastic game from start to finish, had some other good looks that Binnington was just able to answer, but a great tip there flashing in front of that Evans shot to get that 2nd goal for the Kraken. My 2nd star, I'm going to go with the captain in Jordan Eberle. I would say probably bumped up a little bit just because of being named the captain, but Eberle had a fantastic game. Does, in the end, get credit for the primary assist on that done goal, but in general, Eberle had a great night. He set up at least Beniers and I think also McCann for a couple of those really good looks tight in on Binnington in that first period that against just an average night for a goaltender, at least one of those certainly would have gone in, if not both of them. Unfortunately, Binnington just was on his game. He's a good goaltender, and especially when he's on his game like he was in this one, he's pretty hard to beat, and neither of those shots ended up beating him. So Eberle, as the new captain of the team, had to settle for just the 1 assist on the done goal. And speaking of the done goal, with my 3rd star, I am going to go with Vince Dunn. So maybe a little bit of a boring start to the 3 stars, and that all 3 of them are points getters in this game, both the goal scorers and then obviously the new captain. But yeah, we'll start out the season with a fairly, I think, easy to predict 3 stars here. Dunn getting the 3rd one, obviously gets the goal that gets the Kraken on the board and starts the season off the right way. He also had a fantastic game, was all over the ice in general, pushing a lot of the offense as we know he can do, and that was very good to see, especially considering that he was battling back from the injury that kept him out at the end of last season, and really was something he was rehabbing all the way right up until training camp. So for Dunn, able to get back and really make a huge difference in this first game, a well-earned 3rd star. But as always, I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below on this game, the 3 stars, or just the start of the season in general. Some of that new stuff that we talked at the beginning. Obviously, love to know your thoughts on Eberle as the captain, or Campbell as a coach by Elsma, how you liked the new system, the new look of a team. I don't know if it's just because I've been watching baseball now for a few months, but this seemed like a team that was playing a lot faster than what we've been used to. Certainly last year in the inaugural season, they're able to play a little bit faster for whatever reason in that 2nd year, but it seemed to make a pretty big difference. The focus they've had on speeding up the game, it was fun to watch at the very least. So whether or not this team will be good this season, I don't know, but if they're able to keep this up, they will certainly be fun to watch. And finally, one last reminder that if you do want to rep cheat sheets more than just showing this video to a friend or family member, the link to that merch store is newly opened merch store is down in the description below. I think it's 25% off for the first 2 weeks. So now is as good a chance as any to go down there and get any cheap seats merch if you're interested. Again, absolutely no pressure, but until next time, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy the video, I'd appreciate you hitting the like and subscribe button down below. It helps support the channel for free. And yeah, in Minnesota on Saturday, again, reminder, that's on the free public access networks. So King and Kong in the Seattle area. There's other places, whatever your local area network is, or on Amazon Prime Video if you're in Washington, Oregon, or Alaska. For everyone else that's not in the local area, nothing's changed for how you watch the games other than you just won't see Root Sports plastered over everything. With that, though, as always, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!